On November 7th, 2020, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced that he had spoken with Manchester United's Marcus Rashford and decided that the British government would continue providing England's poorest children with free school meals throughout the Christmas holidays in 2020 and during the half-term and Easter holidays in the early part of 2021. This marked the second U-turn in a matter of months that Rashford had forced Johnson to make following his decision to extend free school meals throughout the summer of 2020. However, it begs the question, why is the current British government so reluctant to provide school meals for its poorest children? And why is it up to a 23-year-old footballer to lobby for these meals to be extended throughout the holidays during a pandemic? Guys, as always, don't forget to smash a like on the video, to share the content around. If you're new around here, subscribe to the channel and subscribe to our socials as well. We are on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. There is a long history of the British government providing its poorest children with free school meals, and this is an essential thing for them to do, not only to ensure that the poorest children across the UK are fed, but they are provided with quality nutrients as well. When education was made compulsory in the UK in 1870, thousands of school children were going to school hungry. There was some impetus from local authority to provide some level of school meals for the poorest children, those whose families couldn't afford to feed them properly, but it wasn't until 1944 when the government introduced free school meals across the board, and then 1946 when they introduced free school milk. These laws ensuring that the UK's poorest children were provided with quality nutrients. Admired as an icon of neoliberalism by the right, and regarded as a cold-hearted conservative by the left, Margaret Thatcher's socio-economic policies were often brutal as she sought to prompt the working classes to strive to become members of the middle classes. Thatcher convinced British workers to buy their council houses through the Right to Buy Act in 1980, and that same year she cut free school milk for all school children. She had previously cut free school milk for children over the age of 7 as Education Secretary back in 1971. She did not stop there. She pursued a policy of privatisation for school meals, which resulted in substandard school meals being provided by private companies. She cut the number of children eligible for free school meals in 1986 through the Social Security Act. And this came at a time where fast food and processed food advertising was just taking off in the mid to late 1980s. And this resulted in many kids becoming obese and an even greater amount of kids suffering from malnutrition. Adequate school meals were introduced again under the Blair administration, but not until 2001. Over the past decade, austerity measures and cuts to local government have increased inequality and childhood poverty in the UK, which is now being increased again because of the coronavirus pandemic. Marcus Rashford grew up in a low-income family in Manchester in the 2000s, and he relied on free school meals to ensure that he was properly fed. This is no exaggeration, and a staggering 1.7 million children in England rely on free school meals to ensure that they have good quality nutrition throughout the day. Quite simply, their families do not have the capacity, do not have the money to ensure that they are properly fed. This is a serious issue for the British government to address. This figure of 1.7 million children is a national disgrace and a damning indictment of the British government's failure in their socio-economic policies over the past 40 years. One of the hallmarks of modern conservative politics is to convince the working classes that through hard work and hard work alone that they can have a better life, that hard work leads to promotion, it leads to better pay and eventually to a better quality of life. There is some degree of truth in this, however, it is not universal. At the same time, dependency theory is very real, and there's tangible evidence that providing people with development aid rather than the tools in which they can then become self-sufficient results in them then becoming dependent on that aid. And with pandemic unemployment payments at around £100 a week compared to €350 a week provided by the Irish government, quite simply, this is not a time to be increasing austerity measures or decreasing social support. It is time to do the right thing and to ensure that the entirety of society is well looked after. Following Rashford's success in convincing the British government to provide free school meals throughout the summer holidays in 2020, in the summer of 2020, the British Labour Party then tabled a motion to ensure that free school meals were provided throughout half-term and Christmas holidays and then into half-term and Easter holidays in 2021. However, under pressure from the right wing of the Conservative Party, Boris Johnson neglected to address this, and the Labour Party's motion was rejected by 322 votes to 261 votes in the Commons in October. But Rashford continued to lobby, and this is a powerful indication of the influence celebrities can have and an example of social media actually being used for good. Rashford has a Twitter following of just under 4 million people. And following the British government's decision not to extend school meals for the rest of the year, at holiday time anyway, he reacted on Twitter, posting a series of tweets criticizing the government's decision. And he was backed up by many cafes and restaurants throughout the United Kingdom who pledged on Twitter to provide free meals for children whose parents could not afford to pay for their own meals, children who would be eligible for free school meals in normal times. Rashford started a petition for the government to reverse their decision, and after 9 days, it had over 850,000 signatures. Johnson then called Rashford on November 7th, 2020 to inform him of his decision to U-turn once again. Rashford, somewhat surprisingly, praised the Prime Minister for his conduct here, despite the Prime Minister previously bowing to the right wing of the Conservative Party. One Conservative Party politician reacted to this positive news by saying that less virtue signalling on the part of celebrities on Twitter was required and more action to actually address the starting point issue in regards to childhood poverty. And I think that this nicely sums up my point on Thatcherism and that legacy and that thinking in modern conservative politics. Like I said, there is a degree of truth in it, and certainly we need to address the issue of why there are children who are living in poverty in the first place. However, during a pandemic, first and foremost, and I think at any time, first and foremost, you have to ensure that these children are being fed properly. To fail to do so is just not good enough. Rashford's campaign was a success precisely because of its authenticity. This was not a Hollywood celebrity lecturing common people on climate change while flying from A to B on private jets. This is a young man who grew up in some of Manchester's poorest council estates, who relied on school meals as a child to ensure that he didn't go hungry, and who is using his position of power and of privilege to give back to the community, not only that he came from, but similar communities throughout the United Kingdom. And he has done fantastic work here, and it shows that celebrities do need to use their voice to do positive things, that if you have a certain profile, you can instigate change. This isn't a child poverty NGO doing all of this work. This isn't even the Labour Party doing this work. This is a 23-year-old footballer who is behind the decision for the British government to ensure that school children don't go hungry over Christmas. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget, as always, to smash a like on the video, share the content around, and subscribe to the channel if you are new, and subscribe to our socials on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll be back next week.